This is the Rogue River Trail. Originally conceived after wildfires of 1910, government agencies wanted a way to better access the area. So they came up with the idea of a trail through the Rogue River Canyon. And the trail as we know it now started construction in 1918 with the help of a lot of the local residents. Now there were trails in the area before that because there were plenty of cabins and miners through here. But the entire trail, yeah, that was started in 1918. And it runs 40 miles from Grave Creek to Foster Bar. Now, I was here 5 years ago on the Rogue River in a raft, thanks to my friend and colleague Adam, who also happens to be a river guide. Fantastic way to explore the area. And while we were here, when we were at Rogue River Ranch, he showed me this trail. And since that time on the river, I have wanted to come back and hike this trail. So, here we are. So over the next 4 days and 3 nights, we'll be hiking from Grave Creek to Foster Bar. And this time I'm gonna bring you with me. And along the way, we're gonna explore some of the rich, interesting, and sometimes tragic history of this area. So, let's get on the trail, guys. So over the years, there's been huge floods on the Rogue River, and we just saw the high water mark from 1964. Tremendous, just hard to even imagine how much destruction was caused with water that high. In 1908, a suspension bridge was built on the spot I'm standing right now, and the flood of 1927 destroyed it. Here's what remains. That's a pretty substantial flood. And that flood and the flood in the 60s were by no means the most destructive. That happened way back in 1861. There's been plenty of floods over the years on the Rogue River. And some of those floods destroyed homes, cabins, and some of them changed the course of the river. Forecast says no rain, so looks like we're not going to have a devastating flood on this trip. All right, let's keep going. Rainy Falls a class 5 rapid, absolutely deadly in high water. So most people run an alternate route there. This was named for Old Man Rainey, who made his living gaffing salmon at the falls. So we did not run Rainy Falls when I came here 5 years ago, floating the river. But people have done it. And a lot of people have done it with disastrous results. So doesn't look terribly bad today. The water is not terribly high, but it certainly is beautiful. All right, let's keep going. So during the time of gold mining down here in the Rogue River area, a lot of Chinese were here as well with placer mines, and China Gulch was named on behalf of them. So, beautiful place. This is the Whiskey Creek cabin. It was built around 1880, probably by a miner in the area. Nobody's sure who built it, but it's been standing for well over 100 years and is on the register for historic places. And it seems like a really good place for me to stop and have lunch. China Gulch, Russian Creek. Yeah, you get the idea. It was the 1800s. You know, for a trail that follows a river downstream, this trail has a lot of uphill. I got up at 5 o'clock this morning, drove about 180 miles. And it's been hot today. So, last couple of miles, I was struggling, but got to Bunker Creek, got the Durston set up, ready for a meal and some rest. So, I'm gonna see you guys in the morning. Okay, so that's it for today. I'm beat and hoping I'll get lots of rest because tomorrow we're doing 13 miles and there's a lot of stories to tell about the area between here and 13 miles from here. So hoping I'm refreshed so I can share some of that with you. See you guys in the morning. Behind me is Black Bar, named for William Black back in the late 1800s. He lived here and he died here. William Black was murdered, placed in his own boat, his body sent down the river. His killer was never brought to justice, but there were witnesses, and William Black's murderer may have murdered as many as 3 other people here in the Rogue River Canyon. More on him later. I've stopped here at Kelty Creek, named for Colonel John Kelty. More on that when we get to Battle Bar up the trail. So let's get back on the trail. It's Ditch Creek, I assure you. Creative teenagers, I imagine. All right, let's keep going. So right after Ditch Creek is Battle Bar. So that's directly across the river from where we are now. So named because of a battle that took place there between Colonel John Kelty's forces and the natives on the other side of the river. Before we talk about that, I'm going to explain how we got to that point. So sometime in the mid 1800s, gold was discovered in this area, around the time of the famous gold rush in California. And that, coupled with the Homestead Act, caused people to flock to this area in droves. And by people, I mean the descendants of the Europeans who stepped off a boat and started building Dollar General stores everywhere here. Because so many people were coming to the area, a lot of the resources were stretched. Mining operations sprung up, and areas where the natives used to fish for salmon were upturned, destroyed. The deer and elk populations were stretched to the limits, and villages were pushed out of the way as people moved in. And, not surprisingly, that caused conflict. And in those conflicts, people died. And as a result of those conflicts, the government pushed back, and there were skirmishes and battles all along in the Rogue River Valley and in the canyon here. And as people moved in, there were more and more conflicts. And in one of those conflicts, men, women, and children were killed in a village. And battles continued until the Treaty of Table Rock, which established an Indian reservation outside of this area. And so that was the end of conflict for some time. And while at the Table Rock Reservation, there was disease, malnourishment, and a brutal, brutal winter. And because of that, some of the people there at the reservation returned to their villages here and were met with resistance. So they made their way down the Rogue River Canyon, where we are now. And along the way, they had their revenge, and people were killed. So that resulted in what was called the Rogue River Indian Wars during 1855, 1856. The conflicts continued. Colonel John Kelty was tasked with removing the natives from the area, and with a group of military and volunteer forces, there were several battles in this area. In April of 1856, at Battle Bar, for 5 hours, fighting happened across the river. And ultimately, the natives drove them away. However, fighting continued throughout this area until the following month in May, when eventually the natives surrendered. And this time, they were sent by train or marched by foot 160 miles north to the Siletz Indian Reservation outside of Newport, Oregon, a land where they had never been before. And there were about 2,000 of them living there the first year. During the next census, there were just over 400. It's reported that most of them died that first year or two. So, after that, more settlers moved in. The remaining natives were hunted by licensed Indian hunters. And that was the end of the people who lived here for hundreds, if not thousands of years. And now, 150 years later, I'm hiking a trail where all of that happened. And hundreds of people are floating the river with river guides and staying in lodges, and I don't know. It makes me feel a certain kind of way. But at least being here has prompted me to learn about the area and the tragedy that happened. And it's not a new story. It's not a unique story. Pretty much the story of America is very similar to that all over the place. So, having said that, still got 7 miles to go. So, let's keep moving. All right, on a brighter note, let's go visit the home of somebody who never killed anybody. This is the original cabin of author Zane Grey, who popularized the genre of Westerns and had a bestseller almost every year. So this is a little bit off trail, down through the weeds. And what's wonderful is Bureau of Land Management is here making repairs, keeping this kept up, just like the trails around here. So super grateful for them, and without them we wouldn't be here today. So onward and upward. All right, so I have made it to Tucker Flat Campground, maybe Tucker something. It's a BLM campground, picnic tables and fire rings, so pretty cool. This exists because the only road into this entire stretch of canyon goes to Rogue River Ranch, and so this campground is just up the road, and there's no water here. I'm right next to Mule Creek. It's right over there. Maybe you can hear it in the background. Problem is, it's about 100 feet straight down to the creek. So I just got back from hiking an extra mile to get water. So kind of done. Got a few hours of daylight left, but I don't really want to spend them filming stuff. So just imagine me setting up the tent, setting up the hammock, boiling water, pouring it into Mountain House pepperoni pizza bowl. I'm actually excited to try that. I haven't tried it yet. Making a dessert, lounging in the hammock, pretending to fall asleep for the camera, and maybe some time-lapse star thing or something. So yeah, I'm done with filming. I'm gonna set up camp, so I'll see you guys in the morning. Time to get to it. So this is the Merrell trailhead. Along the way here on this little road walk, we passed Merrell Lodge and a guard station. So this tiny little village area back in the late 1800s and onward, originally called Mule Creek, then named Merrell, and a post office was actually established here. And there was a gentleman who lived down the river named Hathaway Jones, and he ended up getting a contract to deliver the mail throughout all of the Rogue River Canyon, and he did that for years. And that meant a lot of time on the trail with nobody to talk to and nothing to do but think. And during that time, he concocted some of the most outlandish stories. And when he would deliver the mail, he would share those stories. And the residents remembered that because he delivered mail for years and years and years. And his stories were so entertaining that they've actually been put together in a book, Tall Tales of the Rogue River Canyon. Might be worth checking out. Sadly, Hathaway Jones died when he fell off of his horse one day while delivering the mail. Not a lot of happy stories here. So now we're passing Mule Creek Canyon, which is the start of the really fun stuff if you're actually coming down the river, rafting or kayaking. Goes through this chasm, swift, for quite some time. Tons of fun. And there's a section called the coffee pot, because it bubbles and churns and tends to turn you around and kind of keep you trapped in there until it decides to spit you out. So this would be a beautiful area for aerial drone footage, and we're not going to see that today because we've just passed from Bureau of Land Management land to Siskiyou National Forest, and this is a wilderness area, which means, among other things, no motorized vehicles, no drones. It is here to be kept pristine, and I'm going to respect that. So let's keep moving. That was Inspiration Point. Good name. Cool place. All right, next stop, Blossom Bar. So, no history of the Rogue River Trail and river would be complete without mentioning Glen Woolridge. Now, Glen lived his entire life in the area, and when he was a young man, he decided he wanted to run this river. So Glen, along with a young friend, built a boat from scratch, and they ran the river. And after that, Glen spent his entire life running this river, guiding hundreds, if not thousands of people down the Rogue River. Now, years later, Glen was also the first person to run this river from Gold Beach upriver. Now, because Glen had such an intimate knowledge of this river, knew all the quirks, all the tricks, and all the barriers. So Blossom Bar, this area filled with boulders, and back when he started running the river, it was impassable. So you would get to this point and you would have to carry your boat over these boulders to get through. Glen wanted a solution that was much easier, so he used dynamite. Blew the rocks up, blew them apart, and made a course through Blossom Bar. But even with the alterations that he made through dynamite, still a deadly section. Let's take a look. So I've come to Paradise Lodge. Now below Blossom Bar, the river's pretty much open, which means jet boats are able to get up that far. And so we've got some lodges up this way for people who want to spend a whole bunch of money and do this the easy way. So if that's what you're into, this is one of the lodges where you can take a boat and go hang out and watch some deer eat in the lawn. I have no idea. Well, this is not optimal. So I had 3 different campsites picked out, depending on how strong I felt today. So got to the first one pretty quickly, and it was still early. So kept going. Got to the second one. It was questionable, but it was still only like 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So I figured I'd push on to the last one, and the last one is where that waterfall was. Absolutely beautiful, but the only campsites were overrun by rafters. So no room for me there. So I decided to push on, but there are not a lot of campsites here. In fact, that was the last one that's listed. It was about 7 miles to the end. But even if I hiked through, hired a shuttle service, and my vehicle isn't even going to be there till tomorrow. So hiked on another 3.5 miles. This is definitely not a campsite. I have pitched my tent in the first grass that I could find for miles on basically kind of a level spot, and it's right next to the trail. Totally didn't want to do that, but definitely not pushing on. So here I am. It'll work. Got a place to sleep, and only like 3.5 miles tomorrow. I might actually have to wait around for the shuttle to drop off my car. But anyway, short day tomorrow, long day today. I think I did like 14 miles, maybe. Feel good. Got my trail legs. And I haven't forgotten about the murderer I mentioned a couple of days ago. So over coffee in the morning, we'll talk about a man named Dutch Henry, who may have killed as many as 4 people while living in the Rogue River Canyon. So tonight, enchilada bowl. I decided to try all 3 of the new Mountain House meals on this trip. And I was pretty disappointed with the first 2. I've had the enchilada bowl before. I know it's good, so thank God. But yeah, I don't recommend the pepperoni pizza bowl. The beef bulgogi, it's just not what it says it is. They're fine. Actually, the pizza I thought sucked. Don't buy that. I'm gonna put on some Naturopel because there are mosquitoes everywhere here. Cook some dinner, and yeah, nice easy day tomorrow. See you in the morning over coffee. Good morning. Woke up at 5. Didn't want to get up, so 7 o'clock now. If you're new to backpacking, just know that hiker stink after 4 days, that is a special kind of stink. Alright, let's make some coffee. Talk about Dutch Henry. So around 1860, a man named Henry Rosenblum moved into this area, the Rogue River Canyon. And Henry entered into a partnership, a mining partnership, with another man. That man's name was Scotty McCullen. And at some point, Scotty wanted out, got married, didn't want to be a part of that partnership anymore. Scotty wound up dead. Now, according to Henry, Scotty came at him with a hatchet, and so Henry hit him in the head with the butt of his rifle and killed him in self-defense. What he didn't know was, during that argument, a couple of miners actually heard the argument, and they witnessed what actually happened. Unfortunately, when it went to trial, those 2 witnesses never showed up. So the judge had to accept Henry's story, and he was free. So Henry returned to the Rogue River Canyon. And as we said before, William Black was murdered and put in his boat and sent downriver. Well, that body washed up to shore with a hole in the head And evidence pointed again to Henry Rosenblum, known as Dutch Henry in these parts. And so, once again, there was a murder trial. So Dutch Henry went to trial again in 1881 for the murder of William Black. But there wasn't a lot of evidence aside from the hole in the head. The prosecuting attorney ordered the sheriff to exhume the body and bring the head back to the courtroom in hopes of matching that hole to Henry's knife blade. Not surprisingly, when the sheriff arrived with this decomposing head in the courtroom, the judge ordered him to leave it immediately, wasn't going to have such a disgusting thing in his courtroom. And so there wasn't enough evidence, and once again, Dutch Henry returned to the Rogue River Valley. And William Black never found justice. But apparently Henry wasn't done yet. So, in later years, another man, they never found his body. But the last time he was seen was right before saying he was going to spend the night at Henry's cabin. Never seen again. And after that, another man mysteriously died in his cabin that burned right after Henry said he was going there to spend the night. So, Dutch Henry never ever had to pay for the crimes that he was alleged to commit. He lived out the rest of his days in a cabin near Horseshoe Bend, and he even has a trail named after him in the area. So that's the story of Dutch Henry, and pretty much concludes the story of the characters in the Rogue River Canyon. So this is the final day. We're going to see what we see on the way out. And I have to say, it's been an interesting journey. Well, looks like we did it. Here we are at the other trailhead. So approximately 40 miles, depending on your sources. Found that my GPS mileage and the official map mileage didn't really match up, but it's around 40 miles for the whole thing. Of course, we're not done yet because this is not where the shuttle dropped off my vehicle. So a little bit of a road walk down here, but as I recall, getting out at Foster Bar when we floated the river, there's bathrooms and water. So short little walk. I'll enjoy this last little bit. I'm gonna go see if my car is there. All right. Hi, cows. I really have to poop. Alright, I've made it to Foster Bar. This is the end. And my vehicle is here. So thanks to Whitewater Cowboys who run a shuttle service. And so I wasn't stranded 40 miles from where I started. Gonna unload my stuff and then make the 3-hour drive home. So thank you guys for joining me. I'll see you next time.